Hey, howdy, and welcome to the Big and Bright podcast. It's just me again, the lovable Justice James. Nick and I just can't seem to get our schedules together, which is why you've seen us offline for quite some time. Kids, travel, work, all kinds of things just getting in the way from all the amazing news we have to give for you from Texas. I know what you're thinking, and yes, I would love to talk about how Mr. Paxton is fully acquitted. But Nick and I have agreed we're going to talk about that together because we have some words and some thoughts to go back and forth. And I'm sure we'll get an episode out really quick in order for you to hear our agreements, disagreements, yelling, screaming, crying, anything in between. So instead, I have quite a few stories this time going through it. Actually, I said quite a few. It's just three big ones that I kind of found that really are the news right now because Texas, like I said, all of it was dedicated to Mr. Paxton and his impeachment trial. But now that that's over, a lot of things have gone to the wayside. But I'll still cover them here for you, just for you. Anyways, the first story I want to talk about is a Texas book rating law, which has now been blocked by a federal judge. Federal judge Alan D. Albright delivered what they call a major victory for freedom to read advocates, issuing a opinion. Apparently, it's 59 pages, very verbose, and an order blocking the Texas controversial book rating law HB House Bill 900, otherwise known as the Reader Act. This was signed by Abbott this year and would have required book vendors to review and rate books for sexual content. Now, the opponents of this bill voiced their opinions loud and proud, and they voiced them again when it came to this lawsuit, which ultimately led to the blocking of this bill for now. They argued that the standard provided in the bill were too vague and could place the vendor at peril and in legal trouble without even knowing it, without even reviewing the law because it is so vague. The law would have given the state the ability to change the law or change a rating of a book at whim. And if the vendor did not comply, then that vendor would now be blocked from selling to school or public schools in Texas. Opponents also stated book vendors were not actually equipped or had the ability to make those type of determinations because they themselves are not lawyers, they just sell books. So, the supporters of that law said it was passed to help protect kids from being exposed to inappropriate content in school. Now, as a lawyer, I have to read just the language in the bill when it comes to what they determine as sexually explicit material. And it reads, and trust me, if you fall asleep, I'll try to bring it back and bring you home. Sexually explicit material means any communication, language, or material, including a written description, illustration, photographic image, video image, or audio file, other than library material directly related to the curriculum required under Section 28.002A that describes, depicts, or portrays sexual conduct as defined by Section 43.25 Penal Code in a way that is patently offensive as defined by Section 43.21 Penal Code. Did you get it now? Is it clear to you? Granted, as a lawyer, I don't mind those citations to other things. That's what I do all day. As a regular person, I have no idea what I just read. It's about as clear as mud. It basically is so vague that anything that we portray as this is this, therefore it's bad. And yeah, so in that reasoning for the temporary block of the law, the judge wrote the state has abdicated its responsibility by asking parties to rank books. He also scolded the state attorneys in part, and I'll read it from the text. Generally, the government was confused and unaware of how the law would actually function in practice. He also cited approximately 40 instances during the August 18th hearing one, where the government either did not know how the law would function or did not have an answer as to what effects of certain provisions were. Yeah, if you can't explain your own law, then you probably shouldn't have it in there. And the state just faltered. They thought this was going to go through. I mean, I get it. It's a knee jerk. It's a response to all the books you hear that are in schools and bluer areas that definitely have pornographic material in them. But you gotta define it. I mean, I'm a person who works in law. If you don't give me a straight up definition, this means if I was doing this, I could make that mean anything that I want to. I could find a way in, I could find a way out, I could convict, I could defend. This is so vague that I'm actually against the Republicans for passing this, because you know that's how it got passed. Nothing gets past the House and the Senate in Texas without it going through the Republicans. So this got passed by them. This is so vague. It's an automatic knee jerk to all the books you hear about in other states that they wanted to say Texas is going to be the strongest about it. Well, you went so strong that you went way vague because you're terrified of going against the First Amendment, as you should be because it's the First Amendment. But I just don't understand why you put it on the book vendors instead of the possibly just the library staff. I know in the rest of the bill, it actually puts it on library staff and the administration for allowing certain books in the school. But again, as a book vendor, I just sell books. I just sell books. If you want them, give me money. I'll give them to you. If you don't want them, don't give me money. I won't give them to you. I just didn't get it. Um, so I'm actually kind of happy that this this was blocked for now. And granted, the state has already said they're going to appeal, as they should. That's how it works. So if you have a law you think it's good, appeal it, see what happens. I can't imagine Texas Supreme Court's going to go differently, but then again, you never know. But actually, I'm sorry, it's not going to go this state Supreme Court. This will have to go to the Supreme Court because it went to the federal courts. And this judge, Judge Albright, is actually a Trump appointed judge. So all the arguments that say if they're Trump appointed or other appointed, they're running that party line, not so much, because this was definitely passed on a party line in Texas. He likely knew that. And he still said, yeah, this is garbage. He wrote 59 pages telling you how it's garbage. That's how bad this law was. So I really think it's a good decision. I think it should be upheld because it's written so vague. I think you need to go back to the drawing board and try again. You need to get a lot more explicit, get a lot more determinative of what you actually mean instead of leaving it vague to allow the state to kind of play executioner. Because I love my state, but it doesn't get to tell me what I can and can't do on whim, and I'm not able to read it myself to see, well, where'd you get that aspect from? I don't know. I just did today. Today's Wednesday, so why not? I don't like that, so I'm actually approving of this. Sorry about you who actually really like this. I understand the knee jerk. I understand the want to protect the kids. I get it. I'm with you. You have to define your terms. So that's that. Now, next is something that I have not seen in a long time or have not heard about in a long time. A Texas principal has been arrested for administering corporal punishment. Now, I thought a lot of schools did away with corporal punishment after I left school. Apparently not. It's still the same thing as when I was in high school, which is it's there. The parents are allowed to opt out. And that's exactly what I did whenever I was in high school. Granted, I signed the form for my parents because I didn't want none of that. However, I also played sports. And once you're in the locker room, if a coach sees you do something you shouldn't do, that waiver goes out the wayside. So it doesn't matter, anyways. But still, I made sure to opt out. Definitely forged a signature or two. Anyways, this high school principal is from East Texas. He was arrested last week after paddling a student, causing a debate about corporal punishment, of course, to enter into the nationwide debate all over again. Should we, shouldn't we? I don't know. I kind of think you leave it up to the states. We're back to a lot of things where it's a state matter or even a community matter. It's not a national matter. Texas apparently is only one of 17 states to actually allow corporal punishment. A lot of states have gotten rid of it. Some states are just now getting rid of it. So I kind of think that a lot of schools had it go by the wayside anyways, because even the study that I'm going to give you with these reports, it tells you that from about 12 to 15 years ago, it's just gone down dramatically, even though the law's been on the books. So it really hasn't been a thing. This one, however, sparked a lot of headlines, and here's why. So the student's parent was actually present during this paddling. The student had gotten in trouble for some non-disclosed reason, and it was given an option of ISS, which is in-school suspension, or 3 swats of paddle. Her parents, her mom, and her decided the paddle was probably better. It's a lot easier. You don't have to go to ISS for a whole day or two. Mind you, I had my fair share in ISS. I was a heathen when I was younger. It's very boring. I probably would have chose the SWATs too. You get it done, you're out, you're done, you go back to your day. However, what had happened was after 2 SWATs, the student said she was hurt and she didn't want the 3rd SWAT. However, the mother and the principal talked her into, well, you might as well finish the punishment because if I don't finish the punishment's not over and ISS is on the line. So after the encouragement, she got the 3rd SWAT. Well, the next day, the student was interviewed by Child Advocacy Center, which is a child abuse organization to work with children in that kind of realm. She was examined by a nurse who said there was substantial bruising and swelling, which is congruent to or consistent with child physical abuse, because it lasted more than 28 to 48 hours, or 24 to 48 hours. Now, as we all know, some people bruise easier than others. I know that when it comes to me and my wife, for instance, she can hit a wall, have a bruise where it looks like I need to start explaining myself. I can scrape my arm and barely show any sign of it whatsoever. It's just body types. However, the mother was there. The community is actually appalled that he was even arrested. An investigation is being looked at, and he was actually released, and no formal charges were put on this principal. But the advocates, the advocates, of course, they say education advocates and child development experts argue this practice inflicts fear, negative mental health impacts on students. I think the fear should be if I do something stupid, I'm going to get SWATs. That should be a fear you might have in you, and only 17 states allow it. I think a lot more kids probably need some SWATs. I'm not saying beat your kids. I'm not saying the kids get beat. I'm saying the child should have a reasonable fear of saying, "Ooh, if I backtalk this teacher, what's going to end up later? Probably not something good. I'll just shut my mouth." There you go. That's the right decision. But advocates for it who are trying to say this is actually something that needs to stay in, because now it's going to be something that's probably 2 years from now on the House floor going to be debated, because there's already a representative who's willing to put a bill forward, of course, Democrat, but they say they want to keep it in because the practice is actually mentioned in the Bible. Spare not the rod. I see your point. I get it. Maybe you should come up with a better reason, because I get it, but those who don't believe in it think you're just crazy. So you might want to figure out another way. I think my way, which I just gave you of, I'm not saying beat, I'm saying SWATs on the bottom. Well, if you don't hit SWATs on the bottom, don't act up in class. Sitting out in the hall hasn't worked. It never worked for me. I needed the SWATs. I know. Ask my dad. It was needed a bunch of times. I was a hoodlum. But here I am. Somewhat okay person. So it works. But the parents, like I said, in the community have defended the principal. The police don't really know what they're looking into because, again, they kind of see it as not a big deal. The mother was there. It wasn't like this was done in the dark of night or behind closed doors. There was a mother and another female in the room when this happened, because the principal is a male. He wanted to make sure he was protected. Understandable. This is a weird world we live in now. I don't want any allegations saying otherwise. So I'm behind the principal on this. I think it's just silly. I think that this girl probably got the message, and she won't probably be there again. So we'll see how this pans out. Hopefully this investigation goes nowhere and they just drop it because this is a silly reason and the child is obviously fine. I don't get the whole reason where it causes mental anguish about you get to pursue your will against someone who's smaller and that's going to be put in their head now. I don't get that aspect. I don't see myself. I've been bigger than most people, and I was always the most reluctant to fight because I was bigger than everyone else. So no, it doesn't really give that mindset, despite what some very liberal blue-haired person might tell you. Anyways, back to the last story, which is the floating barriers. If you didn't know about the floating barriers, Abbott put this in as under Operation Lone Star, which is our anti-illegal immigration project that we've been doing for a few years now. And he put these big spheres, uh, almost like buoys. If you've kind of seen lanes that are made in a swimming pool, it's kind of like that, but obviously much bigger. Maybe this big around. It's very, very big. And they continue to spin. So you can't actually crawl up on them. That's the whole point. So you're like, oh, well, there's nowhere to go here. Might as well go back. That's the ticket. Get on back, go back to Mexico, go back to your country you likely went through and through and through because you probably didn't come to Mexico first, did come to U.S. first. You came to Mexico, came through Venezuela, came through all this other stuff. Anyways, what those floating spheres were put in the Rio Grande, like I said earlier this year, to deter illegal immigrants from simply wading across and getting in our border. Because if you haven't noticed, there's a crisis. Yes, the Biden administration, there's no crisis. There's a crisis. The Eagle Pass situation from about a couple years ago that you heard about, it's now reappearing. This time it's Cubans, not Haitians. So here we are again, the non-crisis of the crisis. Anyways, earlier this month, a federal judge ruled the flotation barriers were a threat to safety and the, what they say, U.S.-Mexico relations. I think Mexico's just mad that they had to now house the people they weren't stopping. So that's the relations they're talking about. And Texas officials have until September 15th to take them out of the water and onto the riverbank after he issued a preliminary injunction. As you may know, it is now the 20th. They're still there. You know why? Another judge blocked it in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, issued a temporary stay on that, so likely those barriers get to stick around for another few months while that's being argued through. So that's a great thing, because Abbott said, I don't need to ask for permission. I'm just going to ask for forgiveness. The judge said he should have asked for permission from the Biden administration. You know what the answer is going to be. Just do it, see what they do. Well, they won't actually go out there physically because there's no agents to do it because they're all worn so thin. So they went to the courts, which is fine. And the court said, take it out. Another court said, well, it's already in. Don't take it out. We'll argue this through. Boom. Now we have the barrier and get to have it in for at least a little longer until probably ultimately be taken out, because it just will. We can't defend our own state. Of course we can't, because how dare we buck the system? This is probably how it's going to work. It's probably going to turn out. I hope I'm wrong, but I haven't been wrong very much before. But the federal government, like I said, it has a point because it is illegal. It is under federal law. It's illegal. It's a navigable waterway, which is controlled by Congress, which is controlled by the U.S., not Texas. However, when you're not controlling it, because you're not Mr. President Biden, you're not. I know you said that oath thing whenever you swore yourself in as president. Yeah, it doesn't seem like you really care about that. Well, because you're not doing that, we took it upon our own hands to do it. So we wheeled out those rolly pins. All right. And it's not even that whole strip. It's a small strip of land. And they're actually asking for permission on a lot of other pieces of land because it is privately owned, to see if they can start erecting a fence. That way the federal government can't say, we can't do that. Actually, we can. It's a private land. And we're just going to build a fence here and keep it going and keep it going because you won't do it. Yes, it's our tax dollars. I'd rather my tax dollars to go do that than some crap in Harris County, which they usually do, or some crap in Travis County. I'd rather it be used for useful things. If I'm going to give the money, which you don't deserve anyway, to the government, you might as well use that money for a good functional use, which is a wall, which is the barrier, which is sending troopers down there and hiring more people for Border Patrol, because we need it. It's so bad. They can't even keep count. They literally can't even keep count. It's that bad. I remember when early this summer, Biden said, see, we're down on immigration. The next month, jumped straight back up 30%. They try to say, well, it's not as bad as last year. Yeah, because last year, it was completely open. And now you close the door an inch. Oh, no. Good job. It's still open. But whatever. That being said, that's a lot of stuff that I just kind of threw at you really quickly. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope when Nick and I are here next time, we get to really bicker back and forth about this whole Mr. Paxton thing. I look forward to it. But in the meantime, the stars at night are big and bright. We'll see you next time.